it was always imagined Newt, the girl from Aliens. What if she would have had a life, her and her friends living in a colony with just nothing to do, and you can either be a farmer or a miner, and that's all you got to do. And there's a deleted scene on Aliens where you can see all these kids running around in the extended version of that film. And I remember seeing that, it goes like, wow, those poor kids, they're happy now, but once they grow and they realize their circumstances, what are they going to do? So I was attracted to those characters, the idea of seeing those 20-something on that reality.
Hello, and welcome back to The Director's Cut, brought to you by the Directors Guild of America. In this episode, a group of young space colonists come face to face with the most terrifying life form in the universe in director Fede Alvarez's science fiction horror, Alien Romulus. This continuation of the Alien franchise tells the story of a group of young space colonizers with a plan to scavenge a derelict space station. Instead, once they arrive, they discover they might not be alone. In addition to Alien Romulus, Alvarez's other directorial credits include the feature films The Girl in the Spider's Web, Don't Breathe, and Evil Dead, and episodes of the series Calls and From Dusk Till Dawn, the series. Following a screening of the film at the DGA Theater in Los Angeles, Alvarez spoke with director Leigh Whannell about filming Alien Romulus. Listen on for their spoiler-filled conversation.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Thank
you for staying, by the way.
Thank you guys. Before I even get started asking questions, I just have to ask Fede, was that a mold of your face in the astronaut that was hanging in the docking bay all melted?
Yes, it was. It was. It's my
You just had to get yourself in there, didn't you? Couldn't resist.
Yeah, and it was a fun part was to get the head cast and go. I always wanted to go through that process of having to stay there and I was just curious of how that felt. It feels terrible.
It feels terrible.
Horrendous. But as a director, you always want to, when you ask actors to do certain things, like sometimes they have to do that. The best thing that can be that you actually done it. You can tell, I done it. It's not that bad. It's a lie. But it's that bad. You're going to be fine. It's important. I never want to put the actors through stuff that I have no idea how it feels like. So I think that's why I did it. And then we had it. I was like, let's put it in the movie.
How many hours was it in the chair to get that head?
I don't know. It wasn't that bad. No, it was probably 45 minutes of the whole thing and then remove it and that's it. It wasn't that bad.
Well, some of us noticed. Did anyone else notice? No. Okay. So listen, I wanted to start by saying, thank you for this. Thank you for this new entry in the Alien, in the long-running Alien franchise. A lot of film projects, take years to get off the ground. And, they only manage to get dragged over the mountain because the people involved have this grit and determination. And other films seem to come together by accident. One meeting happens and suddenly your next movie is happening. Where did this film fall on the scale for you in terms of how it came to life?
It's a bit of both. It took a long time, actually, because it started in 2017. Around 2017 is when it really started. And we look at now, we are to 24 and finally movies out. So in that respect, it took quite a bit. But it was kind of those we trip in the project and found it. Like it was I went to Scott Free after Don't Breathe came out a little bit after that, and they were talking about Alien, and Ridley was starting to do Covenant at the time, and just as a fan, I was like, oh boy, I hope you guys take it back to the beginning and you make it more like a horror movie and kind of stay away from digital effects as much as you can and really try to bring that grit of the practical stuff, and I could see that in the face of the producer that's not what they were doing, right? And I was like, oh, okay. And he was like, tell me more. What was that? And I was like, yeah, maybe it's young people this time, right? Because we've seen the adults, the truckers in space too many times. And I thought it would be cool that, and it was like, that was exactly what they were doing in Covenant, and more truckers in space. And so it was really going into the direction, which I love every Alien movie. I in the movie, but it was not what they were doing. And they listened to that. They asked me if I could write a page at the time. I did. I kind of stayed there. It's scot-free. Nothing happened at the time because of Covenant. Mostly they were going to do that one. And then in 2020, Steve Asbell, head of Fox, heard that story and that I had once pitched an Alien movie. She said, "We didn't really, but." And he called me up and asked me what was that? What was that idea that you pitched once? And by that point, I had thought about it. You know how this is. We had ideas that live in our head and they evolve even if we're not working on it. You tell people about it. Every time I told that story to someone and they asked me what was the idea, I tell them. And as writers, we do, like, you tell them a story and you're making it up as you go what the pitch was, but it wasn't really because you're trying to make it sound better than what you actually pitch. And that's the process of you do all the time, and you make it better as you pitch it. And then by that point in 2020, I pitched it. It didn't happen either because I think they were trying to make something else. And then by 2021, they called me. It was like, and they were ready to do it. And they asked me if I write it, direct it, and here we are. So it took quite a bit.
They called you and said, "Remember that time you said I want to do everything different than you're doing. Let's do that." It was no longer offended. So Aliens is such a nostalgic film for me. I saw it before I saw Alien, and I saw it on VHS, dozens, if not hundreds of times. Can you tell me about your personal relationship to the Alien films? Like, which one did you see first? Where did you see it? And who were you when you saw it?
I watched the first. My first encounter with the creature and with the alien was a VHS my dad gave me that had the behind the scenes of how movies are made. Back then it was the only way you could see those things, and it had the making of House 2, Death Wish 3, I believe, and Aliens. Both. Yeah, and they all had, and so I could see the first footage from Aliens and Alien also on that VHS, and the behind the scene mostly, which at the time, this is 1990, I was 12 years old probably, and I had never seen anything like that, or how those movies were made, and the animatronics and the creature, and to see that there were a bunch of, I remember being shocked that there was a lot of adults with serious faces playing with those toys. That I remember what? Is this a line of work that people do, that adults like my dad do? It was shocking at the time. And that was my first encounter. And it had the scene from the first kill from the first film was in that making of. And that was the first time I saw that. So that sent me to watch Aliens, which at the time was easy to find on the VHS stores. Alien, it was actually playing on TV at the time, and I saw it on TV. And then Alien 3 came out a couple of years later. So I've always been on the first row of every time there was one of them, and obsessed with what was coming, and also living it through the times. Every Alien movie is a product of its time, right? It's clearly, right now you look back and it's easy to criticize some of them, but they're all really a product of the time because they came out so many years apart from each other. So you have all that 80s stuff on Aliens, and then the nihilistic stuff that Fincher brings at the early 90s, because we all rejecting the pop culture of the 80s and want to go into a dark zone with, Guns N' Roses, let's go Nirvana, right? That's what we all did in 1991. So, and that made complete sense at the time, what Fincher did. Let's kill the 10-year-old girl from Aliens and just go into this nihilistic. And then even Resurrection, when that came, I was a massive fan of Jean-Pierre Jeunet, the director that does Delicatessen, City of Lost Children, and now he's making an Alien movie, amazing. And he brought all those French dudes to be in the movie, great. It was really, every time I enjoy the shit out of them, and I enjoy the changes and the progression, and they happen to be all my favorite directors, really, all those guys that made those movies. I was always obsessed with them, and I became obsessed with Fincher. And so it was, that was the 90s is me and Aliens, right? Enjoying all those films deeply.
It is pretty incredible to join that Hall of Fame. Ridley Scott, James Cameron, David Fincher, Jeunet, everybody that's been involved. I know this is the DGA, but I just want to talk about writing for a second, just because if I'm making a film, it always starts with one sentence in a notepad, this idea, and everything starts to coalesce around that idea. When it came time to actually write this film, what was that one idea? And was it reflective of how you were going to make your mark, knowing what Ridley Scott had done, obviously, Cameron, Fincher, like how, I just want to talk about that first thing in the notepad.
I think it was probably that one page that I wrote back in 2017, and it was it was always imagine Newt, the girl from Aliens. What if she would have had a life, her and her friends living in a colony with just nothing to do, and life cannot thrive, and you can either be a farmer or a miner, and that's all you got to do. And there's a deleted scene on Aliens where you can see all these kids running around in the extended version of that film. And I remember seeing that, it goes like, wow, those poor kids, they're happy now, but once they grow and they realize their circumstances, what are they going to do? So I was attracted to those characters, the idea of seeing those 20-something on that reality. And the big idea, which was always there, and it was there on the first page, that no idea where it came from, but that I'm really proud of, was the idea of having a human character that grew up in a household with an AI, with an artificial person, and that sees it as a sibling and treating him as a sibling and have this relationship, and that and for that to make sense, I felt like, why do they have them? They're not free. They cost a lot of money. Oh, the price damaged and obsolete. And I thought, he's damaged and obsolete. He's not super smart. He's actually kind of slow and simple and just a good heart, because he's gonna do whatever you need and be helpful and all that stuff. That was the origin of the idea, and that we knew that was going to create great drama going into the horrors of an alien movie, right? Like, what's going to happen with those two? That she says to him, "Hey, you're my brother." Words that are easy to say, but really hard to act upon, and really show that when you can tell yourself, well, at the end of the day, he's not real, right? So that was the big idea that was there at the beginning, and what Ridley responded to when we talk about the movie for the first time. And he was like, that's your movie. That is the reason why people are going to watch from the beginning to the end, that relationship.
Well, you're such a brilliant orchestrator of set pieces in all your films. And it's something that really stands out for me. You've come up with some showstoppers in this, the zero gravity, acid blood, just some, how important is that to you during the writing process? Like, do you start with a whiteboard with Rodo, your writing partner, saying like, okay, what are our big scenes? Or is it something that comes about more organically, like as you're writing, you're like, oh, this would be interesting? Or do you put it up front?
I wish we had more of a method, I tell you. I wish my answer could be, yeah, look, listen, this is what we do.
Right.
So that I can apply it in the next one. But we don't really, it's just so chaotic. The process of writing is so chaotic, as you know, and most of the process of real writing, which for me, the real writing is not actually typing. It's just to talk about it. It's just to think and think. And Rodo and I work, in a way that is, I might be, he's going to be on the computer, just usually getting distracted, looking at the internet, like whatever, everything except writing notes, doing writing. And I got to be pacing the room, looking around, and the whole morning, just think. The first morning is just about, the first hours of the morning is just about panicking about we're going to do a terrible job, and what if the studio does this? Can you imagine? Like, do you think we can give the money back that they pay us? That is the morning, and then that's lunch. Okay, it's lunch. And then we go lunch, and then we're Uruguayans, so we nap. So it's a siesta. I think I got to take a nap, and then after nap, someone wake up and go,
This is a great system.
But it is. I tell you, it's so depressing sometimes. I just laugh about it now, but while I'm in it, I was like, what are we doing to ourselves? We're supposed to be writing a movie. And then in the afternoon, after the nap, and you're in that sleepy mode, suddenly, one of us is going to say, you know what? I think, would it be great if there's zero G, and then you go, wow, because there's zero G and there's the acid blood, and then you realize, of course, it's the gravity generator that actually pulls the acid through. Wow, and we come up with something, and then usually we go like, we feel so good about ourselves that we call it a day.
Done for another nap.
Done for the day.
Exactly. This is incredible.
And we move on. But that's how we create most of the things, and then there's a process, and then the writing itself is just like give it shape and put it inside the structure, and make sure that's connected with the themes and the character. But the set piece is something that usually comes up like that, and we're really obsessive about making sure those set piece works really tight, and that is like a domino that all I have to do is on the first few minutes, set up all the pieces, and then I have to just push one. If I feel like I push one, the domino falls, and then I have to reset it and push it again, I think I failed, right? Like the story in the machine that sometimes I stop and then you have to reignite it with some dumb idea or something that is forced into the thing. We really try not to. It has to feel like you're in a roller coaster because you just fall in and free fall in and there's nothing you can stop it. And then you see that the things are coming, makes complete sense. So we really try to be very obsessive when we construct them, that they feel that way.
I think a lot of people who are not from Uruguay in this room just learned a lot about how to structure their day just now. So thank you.
It's all the bad lessons.
Well, obviously one thing I love that I'm sure has been mentioned to you a lot is your use of practical effects. For myself and any fans of the early Alien films, that was a huge part of them. The first 3 films were made during a time when CG was not where it is today. A lot of this puppeteers, at what point was that decision made for you? Because I know that the decision to use practical spaceships was quite late in the process. So I'm just wondering how it all, when did you say to people, I will not allow this to go ahead if we cannot use a practical puppet for the xenomorph?
It was always from the beginning. It was part of that original pitch when I hope you guys go practical. I do believe it just looks better. It just looks, it achieves things that are very difficult. I think maybe with a lot of work and CG with the best company out there, you might get something similar, but I don't think those close-ups we have the creature, I don't think you get that in CG this day. Still, it's not there yet, just the fluids, the interaction, there's water, there's the saliva hitting her in the face and the wind and the smoke twirling around it. It's just the interactions are not there. Also for the actors, those are dangerous machines, those animatronics, right? They're powerful machines that weigh a ton. And so when they're right in the actor's face, you can sense it that they're there. So it was always from the beginning. The studio was a little bit against it at first, not because they didn't believe in it, and not because, and a lot of it was as well. I was like, we need to tell the audience why this one is different, why to come see this one, when the last one with Covenant didn't do so well. So it's like something has to change. And so that, of course, they respond to that as well. But mostly was because they have done it before. Most directors come in with that approach, but sometimes they don't deliver. And sometimes the creature shops create amazing creatures. But as you know, if you don't put the camera in the right place and the light is in the right place, it will look like it would just look stiff. It would look like it's a puppet, it's a robot. Visual effects is so hard to do. I mean, when you do practical, because everything has to line up, right? And that's the part that a lot of times they know the director might have the right intentions, but then the biggest fear is that they're going to pay for the practical and then they have to pay again for the digital, to do it again, which happens so many times. And but didn't happen here. Everything that we went for on the practical side is what you saw there, and the things that were digital were always intended to be digital.
I mean, a lot of times people go into these films saying, all practical, and then they get worn down over the course of the movie. It's a slow war of attrition. But I mean, I have to say, using the actual artists and puppeteers from Legacy Effects, these are all guys who worked with Stan Winston on Aliens. I mean, to be there on set when those guys who were there were bringing that to life. I mean, I just want to ask, was there a moment for you on set where your old life as a film fanatic in Uruguay collided with your current reality of standing there in front of an actual xenomorph that made you emotional? I mean, it makes me emotional. I wasn't even there. Was there a moment like that where you just could not believe that this was your reality?
I think definitely. There was so many of those, mostly when I went to the shop to visit Shane at the first time and Alec Gillis, and they work in all these movies, and I'm such a fan of their work. And you go to the Legacy and you walk through the warehouse, and it's literally like Raiders of the Lost Ark, the end with all the storage, and you look
at your childhood on display.
It's crazy. You look at the boxes and it says elephant from Jumanji. It says whatever you imagine.
The Terminator, Jurassic Park.
They're all there. You see all these boxes with all these creations, and it's fantastic. So that from the get-go, you're like, oh, wow. But in a way, it's such a responsibility. You know how it is. You're there in the set, and there's not a lot of time for me to get. I wish I could do it more, to be like, God, look at me, look at this, look what we're doing. Oh boy, oh boy. But no, you're like, God damn it, I'm running out of time. Like, bring that thing here. Like, that's the xenomorph come and it's slow and it's clunky. And I'm like, God damn it, what am I doing? You know, it's most of the time that's my psyche. It's just like, I remember the first time the xenomorph showed up, the guy in the suit, and they were bringing him by the hand. He couldn't see shit. So he's walking down the hallway and hits his head against the side. I'm like, oh boy, I gotta have to make this look good. So usually it's not like, you imagine that the creature shows up down the hallway looking amazing in slow motion and drooling, and I'm like, yeah. And it's not.
Well, while the camera's rolling,
you're like, oh my God. No. It's not because it's a bad creation, it's an amazing creation, but that's part of the job of the team, to make it look amazing, right?
Right. Well, I'm curious about your approach and how much you storyboard. Like, I know that in real life, you're a very patient, meticulous person who, like, by the way, if he ever, doesn't have a career as a filmmaker, he could be a chef. Like, he'll take 10 hours to cook a brisket. So I know how patient you are. So I was just very curious about your approach on set with how much you storyboard and how much you leave to the moment. What is your general approach as a filmmaker that has developed organically over the years?
I realize I'm a bit selfish when it comes to the process, and I'm becoming more and more selfish with the films. What I mean by this is I started in the first film thinking about what does people need from me as a director, right? And devoting too much energy to that, to why it's like, what does the produce the team, and with more movies and with more experience, I start realizing I need to do what works for me above everybody, and to be in a good creative space and not feeling like I'm spending all my time servicing all the departments. And I think if I do that, I benefit, everybody wins. If I really do it that way, I put the energy on the things that I think are more important and are more important for the movie. So a lot of times, storyboards, for instance, it's not until someone begged me for a board for that scene that I'm gonna go, okay, I'll do a board. I can see the team needs it, and I do a board or an animatic that I do them myself on my computer. Usually an animatic, I'm good with all the digital tools and stuff, so I might do that. But it's really when I feel the team desperately needs it. Otherwise, my joy usually is to create the set piece, walk it, a few days before. Everybody knows what's going to happen in the action, but there's no one frame that we don't do drawings or anything like that, because I mostly shoot from my hip. When I'm filming, I just like to show up, see it with my eyes, see the action, and go, okay, I think I know what I'm doing. And with experience, I would never recommend that someone is making the first film. But for me at this point, I can come up with a shot very quickly, and even with complex things, most of the time, when I have a great DP next to me, like I always have, like together, I know we'll figure it out, and the crew's not going to be waiting for me to tell them what the shot is. But so I try to balance it, because I cannot, if it was up to me, I wouldn't board anything, but the teams need that, particularly when there's some VFX involved. There wasn't a lot of shots here that were crucial for VFX in the interiors. Most of it is the exterior stuff, the space stuff. And those I do. All the space shots, I do the animatics on my computer myself, all the flybys, everything that is full CG exteriors, I will do them on my computer and give them to the VFX company. So it's exactly the shot that I want. I don't
do it yourself in the computer.
Yeah.
You're so multi-talented. You know when actors meet Hugh Jackman and they're like, you sing, you dance, and they feel like they're not real actors? That's how I feel talking to you. Like, I am not a director. You do your own storyboard. Look, you're doing too much, Fede. Just calm down. All right?
I love the craft of filmmaking just more than film. I do. And I always all my life have been obsessed about learning the craft of every aspect of it. It's just something I love.
Okay. All right. I'm going to try that. I know that a lot of directors will sort of zero in on one particular stage of filmmaking. Like, Alfred Hitchcock thought that the movie was made during pre-production and the shoot was just the homework to put pre-production together. My favorite part of filmmaking is sound mixing easily. Is there a phase of filmmaking throughout the whole thing from writing to the end that is that the part you really lock into, that is the part where you feel most like a filmmaker?
the music, recording the music. Everything has to do with the music is from the temping and then recording. I mean, this one we went to Abbey Road for a week.
Oh, wow.
We walked into Abbey Road, I think, exactly on the 38th anniversary that James Horner and James Cameron had been recording Aliens at the same stage. So it was a religious experience just to walk in by complete coincidence, exactly on the date 30 years later. So that is, I mean, I as you know, I'm a musician as well. It sounds like I'm bragging now.
God damn it, Fede.
I do play a lot of instruments, and I have a classical piano training, so it's like terrible. But I do. You don't?
Yeah, of course. I mean, who amongst us isn't?
Doesn't everybody? But anyways, I do. I was actually, before being a director, I wrote my own classical piano player. So I love music, and it's just a part of seeing the musicians getting the music for the first time in the morning and listening to this score sound for the first time, and then you pair with the movie, and the movie comes alive in a way that it never does before. It's always a pleasure, and also it's less stress on me, right? While you're recording and that, it's just the pressure is not really on you. You there too, and I give notes, and I can talk the language of music. So I can come out and talk with the orchestra about how we want this, and through the composer and all the times, just as, so I love the process of recording the orchestra and work with the musicians and all that.
And you use Benjamin Wallfish as well. He's incredible.
That I stole from you.
Well, and your films, I've noticed, that have this pattern that often feature these characters who have to be scrappy to survive. There's always a plan, or whether it's just outside the law, there's always something can we do this to get ahead? Is that something that you feel very close to in terms of coming from Uruguay, really wanting to make films, and the way you did end up breaking into the industry with something that was self-made? Do you think that's a recurring character trait for you because of your background?
Yeah, to say you have to write about what you know, and I think to be honest with the writing, right? And naturally, Rhoda and I, my co-writer, when we think about people that age, you should project yourself into it, because what was I doing? What do people that age do? And if I imagine what I was doing at that time, it was being in Uruguay, dreaming about maybe going one day to get out of there and go to a place where bigger things could happen, that the things that could happen in Uruguay is a very small country. So naturally we always gravitate towards those guys. But funny enough, I did a 1 hour of press last Friday for China, because I don't know if you know, but this movie is bigger in China than it is in the United States at the moment. It makes more money in China than it did here. It did pretty well here, but over there, it's been the biggest American movie in many years. And I was like, what? And everybody at the studio is like, what's happening? What's happening? And before I was going into the call, I was talking with Rhoda, I was like, okay, dude, the last thing we can do is pretend we don't know what happened. I don't know. It's just a hit in China. We had nothing to do with it. So it was like, no, we need to be aware of what happened. So we took a moment, and then we realized those things. A story about a lot of people that are just working really hard and think one day they might get out of that situation. And that everybody on the press was talking to me about that. It's like, why did you decide to write about all these people in this place that they just want to go somewhere else, and they have a lot of opportunities and a bit oppressed by the government? And it was like, for them, they thought it was an analogy of what was happening there, and it wasn't at all. It was Uruguay and my reality. But there you go. You paint your village and you paint China.
I thought you were going to say, luckily I speak Chinese. So,
don't you?
Well, look, Fede, as an Alien fan, longtime hardcore Alien fan, and I think I speak for some people here, I want to say thank you for the reverence that you have shown. I was very proud of myself catching every little Easter egg, from the cornbread to the little bird dipper to the font of the neon sign that says bar, all that stuff. So I want to say thank you for what you have done and the happiness you've brought to Alien fans. Thank you very much. Thanks to Fede.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another DGA Q&A. The Director's Cut is available wherever you listen to podcasts. And please share, subscribe, rate, and review. We'd love to hear your feedback, and you can help fellow film buffs find the show. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time. This podcast is produced by the Directors Guild of America.